Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast with Ani and Brian. Join us as we explore the art and science of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools to strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional. Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you'll understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence. If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
I'm Brian Trzaskos.
Hey there, Brian.
Hey, Ani, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you today?
Doing great.
Excited for episode 15. We're going to be talking about somatic coaching, shocking, and somatic training, somatic therapy training. People talk about this all the time on the calls with our team, Brian, because a lot of people haven't made the distinction yet about whether or not they want to study somatic coaching or somatic therapy. So they're not sure if they want to go into somatic coach training or somatic therapy training. Right. They have a lot of questions, and I got to give us a pat on the back. One of the things I really like about our team is that we have these conversations and we can help people to make a distinction, because there are distinctions and you might not know what's right for you.
Yep. Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions that people ask that we're going to go through today.
Yeah. And we've talked about this in other podcasts, Ani, but maybe we can just revisit it, just encapsulate this idea for a second. The quick difference between coaching and therapy. Because when we talk about somatic coaching or, somatic coach training or somatic therapy training, it's like, what is the difference between those two things?
Yeah, well, Brian, it gets really confused, I think, out there in the coaching space, because in the coaching space in general, the coaching space does not account for the fact that alternative healthcare, if we could say, like alternative solutions, they don't account for that when they're talking about therapeutics, which I think is super fascinating, because we know that a vast number of people, actually the majority of people, if not using alternative health as their primary, are using alternative medicine in some capacity to help their health and wellness. So it's a very important part of this conversation about coaching versus therapy that in the coaching world is not a part of the conversation. I'm very happy that we're having it here because it's important. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how it's usually looked at?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different ways you can kind of look at this, right? It's never just like a stark dividing line.
Black and white.
Not black and white at all.
By the way, it's a very gray line, and I think it's getting more rainbow colored.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, Ani. One of the things, coming from a background as a therapist and also doing coaching, one of the things that I've kind of noticed, like a flag for what a difference might be, for when someone is working with a therapist in therapy, lots of times the goal is to help or treat the primary thing. Like, in other words, to treat anxiety or to treat depression or to treat pain or to treat weakness or to treat lack of endurance or whatever, like the prevalent problem is. Like, that's why you would go to see a therapist.
Because there's a problem.
Because there's a problem. And with coaching, of course, coaching is about helping someone get a different outcome in their life, helping create a different life. And I'm not saying the therapists don't do that, but the focus is a little bit different, because coaches set goals to achieve something different in their life. Oftentimes on the way there, people experience resistance.
Right. But it's primarily the intention is about achieving something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if I could just finish that thought just for a second, the resistance that people end up running into on the way to achieving the thing are things like anxiety, depression, pain, fatigue,
100%.
all the stuff that people go as a primary reason to see a therapist. So I think there's confusion around, well, like, if both somatic coaches and somatic therapists are both helping people with anxiety, depression, weakness, fatigue, pain, those sorts of things, well, then what the heck is the difference? The difference is that coaches deal with that stuff on the way to accomplishing a new result in somebody's life and not as an end all be all. That's just one distinction that for me kind of pops out.
You're absolutely right. And the general way that people think about this is that if this is kind of the baseline functioning for people kind of in the middle, that a therapist works from there's a problem to getting people back to baseline, and then coaches work from baseline to optimal performance. That's kind of a general way to think about it. Now, that way of thinking actually is, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like inherent in that thinking. That's what I'm trying to say. Inherent in that thinking is the body mind split.
Yes.
So we think about it differently because here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, we approach a human being as if the body mind split never happened. And if we're going to do that, you can't divide it up. Just like you can't divide up the body and the mind, you can't divide up that timeline. So just to make it kind of practical here, when you're in a therapeutic-based relationship, based on this example that I'm giving here about, problem to moving back to baseline, one of the conversations and things that people think about and work with sometimes is, you know what I've always wanted? I always wanted this or that thing. Like those kinds of things come up about optimal life, about dream and vision and where I'd love to go. That comes up in that therapeutic relationship sometimes. And on the flip side, with the coaches to optimal, just like you were saying, resistance comes up that actually might be seen in that therapeutic realm because there's things that we need to complete. There's things that we need to look at within ourselves that have happened in the past, or patterns of behavior, right? That when we look at them, then we can go even farther than we could have gone if we hadn't. And so we look at this whole thing very differently from that perspective as well.
Yeah. 100% agree. I love what you just said about the body mind non-split.
Right.
Like, obviously, we talk about for hundreds of years, we've been under this illusion that the body mind was taken apart sometime back in Descartes, world. And we know that actually never happened. So
it's a lie.
Yeah. So we actually are a body mind, or however you want to conceptualize or talk about that. And since people have been trying to kind of put that split that never happened back together again in their minds, it's interesting. Like the body mind is in the middle. I think about it in the middle of, if I draw a line, like imagine draw a horizontal line, like a scale almost. And in the middle of that scale is the holistic body mind. We have both body, mind, holistic, it's whole, it's equal. You kind of think about a Tai Chi, maybe symbol there in the middle. And then if you go farther out from that middle point on one end, you've got the mind, and a farther apart on the other end, you've got the body. That makes sense. So if you're going to split it apart, you're going to put way out the outside.
Sure.
So, and we can debate. I think we need to do a whole other podcast on mind, by the way, because just a quick segue, that mind and brain are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And mind and psychology are not the same thing. At least not the way we look at it.
Sure.
Now,
so we're looking at it more like intelligence.
Right. But a lot of people substitute mind for thinking.
Right.
And I think that gives us actually a limited capacity to actually work with the mind when we only think it associated with thought.
And what we're capable of as humans.
So let's just kind of shelf that for a future podcast.
Okay.
But the way that people thought about this, with mind on one end of this scale, teeter-totter, if you will, and body on the other end, teeter-totter. So for a long time, it was kind of parsed out, right? Psychotherapists worked with the mind. They worked with thoughts. They worked with psychology. They worked with cognitive behavioral change, those types of things. And on the other end of the scale, you had body-oriented people that worked with the body, but did not. So for a long time, you had psychologists that did not work with the body, and you had rehabilitation professionals, body workers, OTs, PTs, massage therapists, personal trainers, yoga professionals that did not work with the mind.
Yeah.
So they're in different camps. And then so as we've been putting the body mind back together, that never happened in the first place, the illusion for these over the last decades, people are thinking, well, how do I start integrating these things? And an interesting movement was made probably back in the 70s with when psychotherapists started including more somatic practices into their work, because they noticed they were getting better results with clients when they included body-centered practices with their psychologically, cognitively oriented practices.
Yeah.
So psychotherapists found a way to start moving to the middle of that balance point by including body stuff into their therapeutics.
And I would argue that they did that before the vice versa.
Yes, for body-oriented professionals felt comfortable, skilled.
They don't feel trained. And then they say to themselves,
whatever.
I should really go back for psychotherapy,
Yes.
but I don't want to be a psychotherapist. And so now they start to look at coaching. And were you done?
Yeah, that's the pathway. That's exactly what I was going to say, Ani. So the pathway for body-oriented therapists, like physical therapists, so there's a lot of research on somatic therapy training for rehabilitation professionals. And I actually think it's more effective to get somatic coach training
100%.
if you're a physical rehabilitation professional, because you have to come from this body-oriented side.
Well, let's talk about the new guy on the block though, because approximately 30 years ago or so, this new guy showed up like, hey guys, I'm here too. I'm a coach. And where does coaching fit into that mind and that body thing? We have a webinar in our resource library that we go into a little bit more of this. It's called Coaching is Medicine. So if you don't have your library card on our website, you can go to our website, get your library card, go into the library, go to the coaching subcategory, and you'll find Coaching is Medicine. We talk about this concept. Brian, I think it's fascinating because coaches actually bring spirit in a new and exciting way to this conversation, because coaches are talking about your values. Coaches are talking about what you aspire to. Coaches are talking about aligning with your true nature of who you really are. And they've been trying to put language around this idea that we could categorize as relatively spiritual in nature. For example, our values. Like, what is it? It's just like, was I born with this? Was it nature versus nurture? I don't know, but I have these things I really care about. We could call that spiritual in nature. However, coaches have been trained from an intellectual, not a body-mind perspective. And so they still haven't, as a profession, brought the holistic nature of kind of what they started into form, because coaches are embracing the spiritual nature of a person. That's actually what's happening, even if they're not talking about it. And the intellectual nature of what's going on with a person, when we also marry the body nature of what's going on with the person, which, by the way, is, I think, one of the reasons why so many of our students tell us that this stuff feels like the missing piece. Just in that sentence, Brian says something was missing.
Correct.
And that something is either body, mind, or spirit. So I think one of the reasons why people love taking somatic coach training, as opposed to, just for a second to contrast it with somatic therapeutic training or somatic therapy training, is because there is that missing piece of putting the body, the mind, and the spirit back in relationship with each other. That is really exciting. And when you're not going to go back to school to become a manual therapist and a psychotherapist and a somatic therapist or coach, because probably at that time and a coach, and spend your entire life studying, you can actually do that, at least from the Somatic Coaching Academy philosophy, when you study somatic coaching.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all of that's so important to consider. And I think we just want to be open to say, there's so many great training programs out there.
There are.
Right? Whether they're somatic coach training programs or somatic therapy training programs.
Absolutely.
And we're not debating one's better than the other, or anything like that. We're saying, what's right for you? How do you determine what is right for you?
And what's right for you now? Because we have students who've studied multiple things, who study with us or go on to study multiple things. What's right for you and what's right for you now?
Yeah.
So people ask a bunch of questions when it comes to this topic. Brian, do you have some questions for us to talk about that people ask?
Yeah, sure. So some of those questions are actually, we've got some right here. Like, how do I become a somatic therapist, or how do I become a somatic coach?
Right. So first of all, you want to make sure you're in the right training program. And that seems obvious, but it's really not. I say that because when you look at the websites for some somatic coach training programs, you're not actually going to see whether or not they're coach or therapeutic based. And when you look at some somatic therapeutic programs, maybe because they've been around longer, they won't tell you that they're somatic therapeutic. You don't know because they're not saying it. So sometimes you have to ask. And I've literally been on conversations with some of our students and prospective students as they're trying to figure this out for themselves. And they'll say, I'm on this website. I can't tell.
Mm-hmm.
So please ask. That's really what to do. Also, as you're looking at the website, you can probably guess, although don't guess, ask, but you can probably guess by the backgrounds of the people who created the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not coaches, then you'll probably get a flavor. The other way to tell is, are they talking about more of a healing kind of thing or an achievement kind of thing? Just to make it like really, really easy as you're trying to decipher. But please ask, because you might not know unless you ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would, again, just reiterate, kind of bring back a little bit of what you said before, Ani, is that when you're thinking about for yourself what you need, the idea is do you need to add in that body, mind, or spirit piece? So if you're really strong already in the psychological, cognitively oriented things, and you probably need to find a place that can add in some really good body oriented stuff. If you are really good body oriented, then you need to find some places that build in a little bit more of the mind, if you will, cognitively oriented stuff. And if you need to build in that spirit, that's what you're looking for as well. And, here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, I'd like to say that we kind of fill a lot of those buckets with our somatic practices training, with core centering, with our somatic tools, with cross mapping, and with the level 2 sensation-based motivation coaching training program. We're really filling in kind of all of those pieces.
Right. So our tagline is complete human intelligence. So that speaks to the completeness. And then to also say that we do get a number of students who have studied something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So whether they're already coaches, or they're already body workers, right? Or they already have somatic practices under their belt, they're already something. And so one of the cool things that our students always say to us is, even though maybe I've studied something like this before, it hasn't been exactly this thing, all of the things that we're teaching are proprietary, you have to remember. So unless you've studied with us, you've never studied exactly what we're teaching. So even if, for example, if you're a proficient yoga and Tai Chi instructor and you take core centering, you are absolutely going to learn something you've never learned before.
Yeah, for sure.
What else are people asking
Another
about?
question, is Reiki and somatic therapy the same thing?
I think that's a fantastic question. So Reiki's an energy medicine technique.
Yeah.
And so some people might debate about whether or not that was a somatic technique at all, but I would say it's a somatic technique. But I think people could debate it because it's an energy medicine technique. I'm a Reiki master, by the way. I'm saying that because we have a lot of credentials, and sometimes people are like, well, what do you know about that? So I've studied that.
Yep. Yeah. And I think we would categorize that as a somatic practice, I think, here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, right? Was that kind of where we would lump that in?
No.
And again, that might be debatable.
No, I don't think so, because the somatic practices are something that really I'm doing myself or I'm doing with you, whereas Reiki is something I'm doing to you. In general, again, in general, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'm doing Reiki to you. It would probably more fall into a manual somatic technique if I were to say that. So sometimes people will tell me that this doesn't happen very often, but sometimes people will tell our team, I'm considering Reiki or somatic coaching or something like that. And Reiki is something that you can get in there, do very quickly. As soon as you start to learn it, you can do it with people. It's a hands-on thing. I would say it's very different professionally. And it's a fantastic way to get your feet wet in energy medicine. And then if you think that's cool and you want to go on, then learning the somatic practices, the somatic tools, and ultimately somatic coaching could be cool.
And essentially, so what you're saying, if I understand what you're saying correctly, if I'm hearing you accurately, what you're saying is that Reiki is something we're doing to someone else.
Yes.
Or to ourselves, I suppose.
You can do Reiki with yourself. Exactly.
Okay. But it's not.
Yeah. And so coaching and somatic coaching is going to have those questions we ask people so that we're helping them to move into, what do you want to achieve? What do you aspire to? What do you want to do with this? Whereas Reiki doesn't necessarily do that. It doesn't do that. So if you wanted to add somatic coaching, if you're a Reiki practitioner, that would be super cool, because then a person could come in, you do some Reiki with them, it changes their state. And maybe that's why you were saying about the somatic practices, because it actually does change a person's state. It changes how they feel and whatever. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then you can ask somebody from this place, how would you like to approach this situation? And those questions are coaching questions. We highly, highly encourage anybody who's a manual practitioner, if anybody's asking you for advice or asking you how they should approach their life, or you're getting in conversation with people, go get your somatic coaching certification, because you're going to do even better work with people.
Yeah. Okay. I have a popular one for you here too, Ani. So how long is somatic therapy training, or how long is somatic coach training?
That really greatly depends. Each program is different. Can I give you my bias?
Please.
Okay, great. I would love to.
You have the floor.
In my not so humble bias opinion, we like to say that it takes 9 months to make a human being. And some people want to do something kind of quick and dirty and get in there and get out. And it's going to take a little bit of time if you want to change who you are within the context of your certification programs. And we've seen this time and time and time and time again with our students, Brian, and I really, really stick to it. The person who you are is going to greatly impact the results that you get with your clients. It is worthy of 9 months or so to put the time in. And of course, there's going to be a greater financial investment as well. The ROI that you're going to get in your life, in your money, in your health, in your relationships from taking that time to become a different human being is so well worth it. So I understand for some people, they want to do it fast, but the way to do it best is to take time. And the reality is that it really depends. For every training program is different.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Ani. And I think as we've matured as professionals, I remember when we first got into this game, 20 something years ago, in terms of starting to invest or make decisions to invest in our own training, development, all those kinds of things. Initially, I have to admit that I was making those decisions based on the time commitment and the money.
And
I was not making those decisions based on the return of value I could get from it.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different level of maturity and decision making. And so what I would really encourage, if you want to get better results in your life, make decisions about any program you're going to do based on the results you're going to get from taking the program, not on the front end investment of it. Right, because you could make a less investment and spend a quarter of the money that it might to be in a more immersive program. But if you don't get anything out of it, then really you've just tossed that money away.
I love that you brought that up so much, because the one way to approach it is very transactional.
Yeah.
And this could be transactional work depending on how you want to approach it. And if you're going to take a weekend course or something like that, but to change who you are, to transform your life as you transform other people's lives, transform your business, how you do business, how it feels to do business, how that business impacts your family and your finances. That is not transactional.
Right. Yeah.
And the way we think about making the decision to get into these things, we really have to catch ourselves. Am I being transactional here? Because on the other end of a decision like this, where we're deciding something like this, and we might be thinking like, I don't want to spend $10,000, or I don't have $10,000. That is not an accurate way to be thinking about a transformational choice like this. We're thinking about it in alignment with transaction. We have to be thinking about it when we're making a choice like this from a transformational point of view. For example, if I so desire this, that all the resources are going to show up for me, we have to think about it in terms of there is actually unlimited abundance. So where is it? Because I must have the time and I must have the money capability, if I so want this for myself and my business, to look at the holistic nature of the decision we're making and how it could impact our health, our business, our wealth, our family, our relationships, all of that stuff, and how it can impact everything in my life. That's not transactional. That's transformational. So we have to come from it, in making the decision from a different decision-making kind of place. And by the way, our team can help you do that. If you are interested in finding out what it feels like to be able to make a decision like that, just come with an open mind to have a conversation with our team. And there's no pressure. We are not going to push you. Absolutely. But you'll have an opportunity to have a transformational conversation with us. Not necessarily a transactional conversation with us, although we can have those, kind of conversations too. How much does it cost? How long is it? How much time do I need? What does this look like? Where's the retreat? Is it virtual, online? Those are transactional questions. And our team loves to have transformational conversations with you. Just to experience that with our team is worth the time of sitting down with our team.
Right. So whether you're investigating a somatic coach training program or a somatic therapy training program, the idea is what kind of person will you be after you complete the training?
If you want to ask that question,
that's an important way to kind of think about it. If you're coming at this
Totally.
place from what we're wrapping it back, body, mind, spirit.
Yeah.
That's how the body, mind, spirit would ask that question. It would
Yeah.
say, how can I grow in all parts of my life, not just one part of my life?
Yeah.
It's not just about getting the letters behind my name. It's about not caring that I have the letters behind my name when I'm done, because I'm a different person in that regard.
It's not just about the tool, it's about the creation. And you're a part of the creation, right? It's not just about the tool that I'm going to do with somebody or do on somebody. It's about the creation of who I'm becoming. Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Brian. Thank you so much.
Yeah. The other thing that I like to think about, Ani, when should I choose a somatic coach training program or somatic therapy training program? Part of the way I think about it is how quickly will you be able to implement and get a return on what you're learning?
Yeah.
Now, some programs are like, listen, you got to go through 2 years of training before you can even do this thing with a client and get any type of compensation for it. We don't believe that that's the best way to move forward.
I just had that happen the other day. Yeah. A prospective student was saying another program I'm looking at, which was a somatic therapy training program. They couldn't even do anything after they spent, I think it was $10,000 in like 2 years. They couldn't even do it after they were done. Even after they were done, Brian. It was wild. It was wild. So that's a really great tip.
Yeah, really great tip. So, and this just goes back to that question again, what kind of person will I be on the back end of this? And what is the outcome of what I'm investing in? Not what does the investment cost, it's what the outcome of my investment.
Yeah.
And if you can very quickly start applying what you're learning immediately and start gaining some revenue back and start changing your life right away, I think that's worth everything.
Yeah, that's baked into our programs because as people start, they actually start integrating the work better and differently. And so part of our helping our students to become more confident in what they're doing is actually this integration piece that you're talking about.
Yep. And there's all those, the other thing that we would look at, which we've talked about a lot too, Ani, that I would look at is how much business support is a part of the program. Like, should I choose a coach training or therapy training?
Yeah.
Like, how much are you just going to get a certificate or have you certified in something? Might be very highly qualified. Might be you've done 4 years of it and then you're out on your own. You're like, what do I do now with this?
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that thought, if there is business training, check out if it's online business training, like you're going to be an online business, because a lot of people who are graduating from somatic therapy training and somatic coach training are going to see people in person and are going to see people online, but not in an online business kind of way.
Correct.
And a lot of that business training is online business training. And I would say most of our, like 95% of our graduates and students are not running online businesses. They're doing this live with people. And so you actually need a different kind of sales training.
Right. So can I just clarify really quick, online business?
Yeah.
Because some people think online business is to work virtually with people.
Right. Means you're doing a Zoom meeting.
Great.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
Right. What we're talking about is how are you marketing, having conversations with your clients about enrolling, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Like this, like funnels.
Yes.
Landing pages.
Like flags, bells, alerts.
Yeah. Software. Like all of those things, if you're talking about funnels and you're talking about, like
nurture
that's
sequences.
Yeah.
You're talking about,
tripwires.
It's
That's
like,
an online business.
be wary.
That's not,
Be
I
wary.
do my work in a Zoom meeting virtually. That's, I have an online business. Totally different way of doing business.
Yeah.
And the reason we're passionate about this is it's a big reason why people like us who work with people don't succeed in business, because we're trying to learn a business structure specifically in terms of how we market our businesses that do not work for practitioners like us. And people, it just pains me, Brian. It pains me so much. It hurts. It hurts. So many people are learning they're great strategies. They just don't work for people like us. And that's what they're taught. And then they think something's wrong with them.
Yeah. Why isn't this working?
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's not the right strategies for a person who runs a transformational business like you. It's not you.
Yeah. So maybe we can just bullet point a couple of things as we kind of start to summarize our day today, our episode today. So when you're choosing between somatic coach training, somatic therapy training, what am I supposed to do? The idea is, first kind of topic we talked about is, are you interested in helping someone work on the issue itself, or helping someone grow and create something new in their life and understand how to work with that issue along the way when it gets in the way of creating something new? I think that's one basic kind of way to look at it.
If you're a growth junkie or a coach.
Yeah, you're a coach.
Couldn't help say that.
Yeah. So the other one is like, what do you need? What do you need in your experience in order to round out the whole body, mind, spirit stuff?
Yeah.
Are you already a body oriented practitioner that needs to understand how to add in ways to help people navigate their subconscious change process? Or are you really, really good at that, and you need to actually build in things that help regulate and stabilize someone's nervous system from a bottom up approach? Totally. So understand, hey, which one of those do I need? And that's going to help you figure that out.
Or do you want a program that puts that all together for you?
Yes. Yeah. Or do you want all those components in there?
Right.
And then finally, like how much business support is associated with it, and how quickly can you turn around and use the strategies you're learning immediately in real client situations in order to get your ROI cooking.
Totally. I loved this episode, Brian. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Anna.
Man, this was super, 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 super duper. I know people are going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, we're not in next week.
Yeah, we're out of the office next week.
We are. We're working on finding substitutes. I'm sure we're going to find somebody. I'm not sure who yet. So make sure you check out the episode next week and find out who's going to be sitting in these seats for you at the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Until then, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself. Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.